The story of Osiris begins with the king of Egypt called Geb, who prayed to Jah on behalf of his wife Nut because she was barren. Jah answered his prayer and Nut became pregnant with 2 boys. During the pregnancy, the twins were fighting inside the womb of Nut, so she consulted with Jah, who advised that within her womb are 2 separate nations that will become rivals. As Nut was giving birth, one of the boys began to emerge from the womb, so the midwife announced Ham as the firstborn. But his brother was impatient and prematurely broke out from Nut, so he was named Set, which means author of disorder. Set was born red and hairy, while his brother was born black with smooth skin, and he was named Osiris, which means mighty one. As the brothers grew, Set roamed the desert known as the Red Land and became a skillful hunter, while Osiris lived the humble life of a farmer and settled along the riverbank known as the Black Land. Osiris eventually succeeded his father to become the king of Egypt. This made Set jealous of his brother, and he conspired to overthrow Osiris. Osiris was drowned in the Nile River, which carried his corpse out to the Mediterranean Sea. The corpse of Osiris was swallowed by a great fish, but Jah commanded the fish to vomit Osiris onto the dry land. When the sisters of Osiris heard the fatal news of their brother, they scavenged his corpse and shipped it to the temple of Anubis to be embalmed. Then Osiris descended into the underworld to bring judgment to the souls of the dead. As the heir to the throne, Set ruled Egypt as a tyrant, and the country went into turmoil. Therefore, the spirit of Osiris planted his seed within the womb of his virgin widow called Isis, and she became pregnant with a son called Horus, who was prophesied to deliver Egypt. When Isis gave birth to Horus, his uncle Set hunted for the baby to kill him, but the angel of Jah warned Isis of Set's plan. So she placed Horus within a papyrus boat and hid it among the swamps of the Nile. While the wife of Set was bathing in the river, she found the boat containing Horus, but she pitied the baby and secretly nursed him until he was older. Horus the elder avenged his father's death and overthrew Set, who was cursed with infertility and banished from Egypt. So Set changed his name to Edom and went out from the presence of Jah and lived in the land of wandering. Horus sacrificed the followers of Set upon the tomb of Osiris and gave up his spirit to his father, who ascended from the realm of the dead to live eternally in paradise.
The Dendera Zodiac is an ancient Egyptian calendar and a sky map that is dedicated to Osiris, the god of agriculture. The cult of Osiris was primarily an agrarian society who founded the science of agricultural astrology. Coded within the sacred calendar is the story of Osiris, which coincides with the agricultural yearly cycle that was divided into 3 seasons of flooding, growing, and harvest. The first season of flooding, known as Akhet in the ancient Egyptian language, was aligned with the summer solstice and was celebrated with a New Year's festival known as Wapet Renpet, which means the opening of the year and commemorates the renewal of the Nile flood and the spiritual rebirth of Osiris. The Orion constellation corresponds with the god king Osiris, who civilized Egypt by introducing agriculture. The main spirit animal of Osiris is a bull called Apis, which corresponds with the Taurus constellation. One full moon night, the evil brother of Osiris called Set transformed into a wild bull and drowned Osiris in the Nile River, which corresponds with the Eridanus constellation. The corpse of Osiris was carried out to sea, where it was swallowed by a whale, which corresponds with the Cetus constellation. When Isis, the queen of Egypt, and her sister Nephthys was informed about the death of Osiris, they began to weep, and their tears fell to earth like a volley of arrows. Isis is equated with the Nubian goddess called Satis, who is said to use her bow to eject arrows of water into the Nile. This is an allegory for the monsoons of Ethiopia that cause the Nile to flood each year. The new year was preceded by the helical rising of the star Sirius, which is depicted between the horns of a divine cow known as Mahet Waret, which means the Great Flood. Sirius is personified as a goddess called Sopdet, whose name means the sharp one or triangular one, alluding to her association with an arrow of Satis. The goddess Nephthys is equated with a sister of Satis called Anuket, who aided with the flooding of the Nile by pouring water from her sacred jars, and for this reason has a festival dedicated to her. The festival of Anuket began when the Nile started to flood and offerings were thrown into the Nile in appreciation for its life-giving water. The corpse of Osiris remained within the belly of a whale for a number of days before being expectorated upon the banks of the Nile. This is an allegory for the black fertile silt, which symbolizes the body of Osiris being deposited from the flood. When Isis found the corpse of Osiris, she extracted the seed from his phallus and placed it within her womb. Isis symbolizes the soil along the riverbank, which is impregnated by the rich silt to create a perfect environment for the ploughing process to begin. The Big Dipper, also known as the Plough constellation, is depicted as a bull's thigh and is associated with Set, who after inheriting the throne ravaged the country, which is an allegory for the ploughing of soil. The furrows made within the fertile soil symbolize the womb of Isis, while the seeds that are sown symbolize the seed of Osiris. Isis corresponds with the Virgo constellation, which is depicted as a virgin holding an ear of grain that symbolizes the phallus of Osiris that contains his seed. The corpse of Osiris was placed upon a ship, which corresponds with the Iago Navis constellation, and Osiris was transported through the gates of the underworld, which are guarded by the lion deity called Akhu, who corresponds with the Leo constellation. The ship of Osiris was navigated by Nephthys in her form of a crow, which corresponds with the Corvus constellation. The journey of Osiris into the underworld was commemorated with a celebration known as the Wag Festival. During this festival, people made small paper boats that were sailed from the eastern bank to the west, signifying the journey of Osiris and their deceased loved ones into the afterlife. When Osiris entered the underworld, he plundered the keys of death from the evil serpent called Apep, who corresponds with the Hydra constellation. Osiris was established as the judge of the dead and liberated all the souls of the dead who had been imprisoned from the beginning of time. The Lupus constellation corresponds with Anubis the wolf, who weighs the hearts of the dead upon the scales of justice, which corresponds with the Libra constellation. The souls of the unrighteous are tormented by the goddess Amit, who corresponds with the Centaurus constellation. Amit lives within the eternal lake of fire, which is depicted as the Crux constellation. The plundering of the underworld is an allegory for the harrowing of soil after it has been ploughed, and is commemorated on the first new moon after the autumnal equinox with a celebration known as the Festival of Lights. During this festival, lamps are lit to symbolize the spiritual victory of light over darkness and good over evil. The birth of Horus was signified by the rising of a morning star, known as Subtu in the ancient Egyptian language. When Set saw the star of Horus rising in the east, he went on a hunt to destroy the divine egg containing Horus. So Isis, in her form of a falcon, flew to the swamps of the Nile and nested within a papyrus boat, which is associated with the Corona Australis constellation. Horus emerged from the egg on a winter solstice, but a scorpion of Set found Horus and paralyzed him with a sting to his right eye, also known as his solar eye. The Orpheus constellation corresponds with the solar boat of Ra, which was traveling across the heavens, but came to a standstill while Horus was paralyzed. So Ra summoned the goddess Serket, who healed Horus after being paralyzed for 3 days. Then Ra continued with his journey across the heavens. The resurrection of Horus was commemorated 3 days after the winter solstice, which coincides with the Christmas festival. During the festival, offerings were placed under an acacia tree, which is sacred to Horus. The Draco constellation is depicted as a hippo and corresponds with the goddess Tararet, who is the consort of Set, and she secretly reared Horus in the swamps until he became Horus the Elder, which corresponds with the Hercules constellation. The birth and growth of Horus is an allegory for the germination of seeds and the second season of growing, known as Peret in the ancient Egyptian language. Horus went into a battle with Set to avenge his father's death. During the battle, Set injured the left eye of Horus, and in retaliation, Horus made Set infertile by severing his testicles. Horus also cut off the head of Set and replaced it with the head of a wild donkey, which corresponds with the Hercules constellation. The eye of Horus was healed on a full moon night and offered to Osiris, who resurrected from the realm of the dead. Osiris then ascended into paradise, known as the Field of Reeds, which corresponds with the square of the Pegasus constellation and symbolizes the third season of harvest, known as Shemu in the ancient Egyptian language. The resurrection of Osiris is commemorated on the first full moon after the spring equinox and coincides with the Easter festival. During this festival, pigs, which represent Set, were sacrificed to Osiris. Osiris is closely associated with the bull deity Apis, who is believed to be the spiritual animal of Osiris and all his successors. Hence the kings of ancient Egypt used epithets such as the mighty bull and wore a bull's tail to embody the power of Apis. It is no coincidence the ancient Egyptian word Ka means both spirit and bull. Also, the hieroglyph for spirit is a gesture of upraised arms to resemble the horns of a bull. According to Osirian tradition, Apis was born from a divine heavenly cow who became impregnated by a beam of light which projected from the moon. When Apis reached 28 years old, he was drowned on a full moon night by a wild bull, and his soul descended into the underworld. The soul of Apis was believed to go through continual cycles of reincarnation via a virgin cow. The reincarnated calf was identified by specific markings upon its body. When the reincarnated Apis reached the age of 28, it was ritualistically drowned on a full moon and buried in a sacred tomb.
The cult of Osiris is primarily an agrarian society who worshipped Osiris, the ancient Egyptian god of agriculture. Farmers planted, cultivated, and harvested crops based on different phases of the moon. For this reason, the moon god called Yah or Jah was also important to the cult, and he merged with Osiris to become Osiris Yah. When Osiris is in his form of Yah, he is depicted holding the Eye of Horus, which symbolizes the life force of the moon and is the emblem of the Osirism mystery cult. According to Egyptian mythology, Osiris was killed by his evil brother called Set, who dismembered his corpse. The dismemberment of Osiris is an allegory for the waning phases of the synodic lunar cycle. Eventually, the members of Osiris was recovered and his corpse was reassembled. This is an allegory for the waxing phases of the synodic lunar cycle. Horus, the son of Osiris, then sacrificed his left eye to restore the life of his father, who was resurrected from the realm of the dead as a full moon and glorified with the Hanuya chant, which means praise Yah. The Eye of Horus has become a symbol of restoration and was used as a talisman by Osirians. According to the mystery tradition, Osiris takes 28 days to orbit the Earth in his lunar boat. This corresponds with the sidereal lunar cycle. Each day, Osiris stops at a lunar station and releases his life force, which is absorbed by the Eye of Horus talisman and transmitted into the possessor. Magicians or Heka practitioners also use this lunar energy to cast spells.
Moon magic is a spiritual practice from ancient Egypt, which is believed to be pioneered by Osiris, who used the moon's energy for the purpose of agriculture. This is also known as agricultural astrology and was practiced by ancient farmers of the Nile Valley. The farming process is likened to that of the magical process. For example, the energy of a new moon is harnessed to plant the seeds of your intentions, which germinates during the moon's waxing period and is reaped using the energy of a full moon. To do a moon magic ritual, you must first absorb the magical power known as Heka by placing your arms into what is known as the card gesture. While in this position, recite the following incantation to invoke the god of authoritative utterance called Hu. To me belongs authoritative utterance. What I say is good, my utterance is good, and what I say is done accordingly. I am Hu, Lord of authoritative utterance. When you have finished reciting this incantation, position your hands into what is known as the Ankh gesture to awaken spiritual energy needed to manifest. Now use the sixth sense of your heart to visualize your intentions while chanting the name of Hu. According to Osirism, Osiris was a master magician who served the light side of a cosmic force called Heka, which is the ancient Egyptian term for magic, and was used to maintain cosmic order. Osiris has a brother called Set, who once served the light side of Heka and helped Osiris maintain cosmic order by protecting the sun god called Ra from the evil serpent of chaos called Apep. But Set began to oppose Osiris and abandoned serving the light side of Heka, as he believed a magician can only reach their highest potential by exploring the dark side of Heka, which is used for cosmic chaos. Osiris planted a paradise within the seventh heaven, where the souls of humanity lived in a blissful state. In the middle of paradise is the tree of immortality and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Humanity was permitted to consume the elixir of life from the tree of immortality, but forbidden to consume from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. However, Apep, the serpent of chaos, lived beneath the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and he persuaded humanity to consume from it, which corrupted their souls. As a punishment for their transgression, humanity was banished from paradise to endure a life of suffering upon earth, where they became ignorant of their true essence. Then Ra transformed into the divine cat called Mao to banish Apep and guard the tree of immortality, so that humanity may not consume its elixir of life and become immortal. When Osiris saw the plight of humanity, he descended from his celestial abode of Orion and incarnated on earth to liberate humanity from the prison of ignorance which was created by Set. Osiris was described as a giant who became a mighty man in the earth, hence his name fittingly means the mighty one or the giant. Osiris went on to civilize humanity and united them with his secret doctrine. During this time, humanity spoke one language, and they began to build a city with a tower that pierced the heavens. The apex of the tower was crafted from a golden stone known as the Benben stone, or the pyramidion of light, which illuminated the earth. When Set, whose name means author of confusion, saw the city and the people building the tower, he became concerned that humanity will become illuminated and liberated from the bondage of ignorance. Therefore, Set obstructed the completion of the tower by uttering a curse to confuse the language of humanity, who became divided. The goal of every Osirian is to attain Mar-Keru, which is an ancient Egyptian term meaning justified, and is defined as the deliverance of the soul from endless suffering. It was believed that following the death of a mortal body, the spirit descends into the underworld to be judged by Osiris. The sinful soul is cast into the eternal lake of fire to be tormented. This is known as the second death, and is symbolic for the reincarnation of a soul. In contrast, the soul of the sinless is transfigured into an illuminated being known as an Akhu, which ascends to the astral plane to join other illuminated souls who are collectively known as the Akhu. In contrast, the Akhu, which is the plural meaning of illuminated in the ancient Egyptian language, is also the name of a secret society of individuals who have completed the Osirian initiation rites, which emulate the funerary rites of Osiris. According to Egyptian mythology, Osiris was drowned in the Nile River, and his corpse was eventually recovered and buried with the necessary funerary rites so that he may resurrect as an Akhu. During the Osirian initiation rites, the burial and resurrection of Osiris is reenacted with a rite of baptism, which is the act of immersing an initiate in sacred water to depict the drowning of Osiris. When the initiate is immersed into the water, it symbolizes the burial of Osiris, and when the initiate is raised from the water, it symbolizes the purification of the soul and resurrection of Osiris. The Akhu organization are said to be in possession of a pyramidion of light, upon which a phoenix called Bennu perched upon at the dawn of the ages, approximately 24,000 years ago, when the earth transitioned from a state of darkness and chaos into a state of light and order. Humanity began to spiritually evolve until approximately 12,000 years ago, when the great serpent of Atum the Destroyer caused a catastrophic event that plunged the earth back into a period of chaotic darkness, and humanity began to spiritually devolve. Atum, whose name means to complete a cycle, is symbolized by a serpent eating its own tail, known as an Ouroboros, which is symbolic for the 3 cycles of the sun. The first cycle is the 24-hour cycle of a day, which is bisected into 12-hour periods of light and dark. The second cycle of the sun is a 360-day cycle of a year, which is bisected into 180-day periods of light and dark. And finally, the third cycle is a 24,000-year cycle known as the Great Year, which is bisected into 12,000-year periods of light and dark. The 12,000 years of light is ruled by Osiris, who was symbolically drowned 12,000 years ago by Set, who has ruled the last 12,000 years of darkness. However, the Earth is currently on the cusp of a new great year, marked by the age of Aquarius, when humanity will awaken from their state of ignorance and transcend into a state of illumination once again. According to an Osirian prophecy, in the last days of the ages, the hearts of humanity will become so wicked that Osiris, the King of Kings, who is known in the ancient Egyptian language as Asar Nesut, or more commonly by the Latin translation Osiris Rex, will unite with a phoenix called Bennu in the heavens to renew the earth and bring forth the final judgment upon humanity. Osirians believe this prophecy was fulfilled on the 8th of September 2016, when NASA launched a space mission called Osiris Rex to inspect an Earth-impacting asteroid called Bennu. On the 20th of October 2020, the Osiris Rex spacecraft successfully landed upon asteroid Bennu, fulfilling the ancient prophecy of Osiris Rex uniting with Bennu in the heavens to bring the final judgment and renew the earth. The cult center of Osiris is Abydos, where the Temple of Osiris, known as the Osirian, is located. It is within the Temple of Osiris that we find a sacred symbol known as the Flower of Life, which is a depiction of the human energy field, also known as an aura. The 7 vertical nodes of the Flower of Life correspond with the 7 energy portals of the body known as chakras, and are associated with the 7 gates of Osiris, which are guarded by the 7 spirits of Set. The first gate of the first heaven is composed of lead and guarded by the spirit of sloth. The gate of the second heaven is composed of tin and guarded by the spirit of lust. The gate of the third heaven is composed of iron and guarded by the spirit of gluttony. The gate of the fourth heaven is composed of copper and guarded by the spirit of greed. The gate of the fifth heaven is composed of mercury and guarded by the spirit of wrath. The gate of the sixth heaven is composed of silver and guarded by the spirit of envy. And the gate of the seventh heaven is composed of gold and guarded by the spirit of pride. When the 7 spirits of Set have been removed, the soul is transformed into a state of immortality and enters the paradise of Osiris, which is located on the 7th heaven. The transition of the soul through the 7 gates of Osiris is symbolic for the transmutation of lead into gold, also known as alchemy, which is an occult science credited to Osiris.
From a very early period, the Egyptians were famous for their skill in the working of metals and their attempts to transmute them. And according to Greek writers, they employed quicksilver in the processes, whereby they separated the metals gold and silver from the native ore. From these processes, there resulted a black powder, or substance, which was supposed to possess the most marvelous powers, and to contain in it the individualities of the various metals, and in it, their actual substances were incorporated. In a mystical manner, this black powder was identified with which the body the god Osiris was known to possess in the underworld, and to both were attributed the magical qualities, and both were thought to be the sources of life and power. Thus, side by side with the growth of skill in performing the ordinary processes of metal working in Egypt, there grew up in that country the belief that magical powers existed in fluxes and alloys, and the art of manipulating the metals and the knowledge of the chemistry of the metals and their magical powers were described by the name chemia. That is to say, the preparation of the black ore or powder, which was regarded as the active principle in the transmutation of metals.